I never thought someone like Dashiell Winters would notice someone like me. He was the kind of person who commanded attention without trying, all sharp intelligence and easy confidence, the teaching assistant's favorite in every lab section. Meanwhile, I was just Sam, the guy who double-checked everything 3 times and still worried I'd mixed up the reagents. The first time he requested me as his lab partner, I assumed it was a mistake. We were standing in the chemistry building hallway, that antiseptic smell of cleaning solution mixing with something burnt from someone's failed experiment, when Professor Chen posted the pairings for our organic synthesis project. I saw my name next to his and actually looked around, thinking there might be another Sam in our section. "Hey, partner." His voice came from right behind me, warm and amused. "Ready to make some molecules?" I turned, and there he was, backpack slung over one shoulder, those ridiculous green eyes that seemed to catch every light source in the hallway. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. "You usually work with Marcus or Jennifer, the people who actually know what they're doing." Dashiell laughed, and it wasn't mocking. It was genuine, the kind of laugh that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. "I requested you specifically, Sam. You're meticulous. You actually read the entire procedure before we start instead of just diving in and hoping for the best. Do you know how rare that is?" That was 3 months ago. Since then, Dashiell had requested me for every single project. The spectroscopy analysis, where we spent 6 hours in a darkened lab room, our shoulders touching as we peered at computer screens showing molecular vibrations. The distillation project that was supposed to be simple, freshman-level work, way below what someone of Dashiell's caliber should be doing. When I pointed that out, he just shrugged and said he liked working with me, that it was relaxing. Meanwhile, I was discovering that being near him was the opposite of relaxing. It was electric. It was torture. It was noticing the way his fingers moved when he adjusted the Bunsen burner flame, precise and careful. It was the casual way he'd touch my elbow to get my attention, his hand lingering just a second longer than necessary. It was the coffee he started bringing me every Tuesday and Thursday, my exact order, oat milk latte with an extra shot, even though I'd never told him what I drank. "You get the same thing every time from the campus cafe," he'd said when I asked how he knew. "I pay attention." I was falling for him, obviously, catastrophically. The kind of falling that made me rehearse conversations in my head at 2 in the morning, imagining scenarios where I could casually mention that I was gay, that I noticed him, that maybe he'd noticed me too in that way. But Dashiell was impossible to read. He was friendly with everyone, tactile with everyone, brought other people coffee too, probably. I was building castles out of sand, finding meaning in moments that meant nothing. Then came the polymer synthesis project. It was a junior-level assignment, something Dashiell could have done in his sleep. He was already taking graduate seminars, had been published as an undergrad in 2 chemistry journals. This project was busy work, beneath him in every way. "You requested me again," I said, finding him in the library where he was sprawled across an armchair, reading something dense and theoretical. "Dash, this project is literally designed for people who struggled with Organic 1. You're taking physical chemistry. Why would you want to waste 4 weeks on this?" He looked up from his book, and something shifted in his expression. The easy confidence flickered, replaced by something more uncertain, more vulnerable. "Can we talk? Not here. Maybe take a walk?" My heart started doing complicated things in my chest. "Okay." We ended up at the campus arboretum, following the path that wound between oak trees just starting to turn gold with early autumn. The air smelled like fallen leaves and distant rain. Dashiell was quiet, which was unusual. Normally, he filled silences with observations about chemistry, or terrible puns, or questions about my life that suggested he actually cared about the answers. "I'm not good at this," he finally said. We'd stopped near the pond, watching geese glide across dark water. "I'm good at chemistry. I'm good at understanding systems and reactions and predictable outcomes. But this, people, feelings, I never know if I'm reading things right." "Reading what right?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. He turned to face me fully, and I could see him gathering courage, the same way he looked before presenting research findings to a room full of skeptical professors. "I keep requesting you as my lab partner because I'm trying to spend time with you, Sam. As much time as I can get. I know it's ridiculous, taking these projects that are way too simple, but they're excuses. They're reasons to be near you without having to explain why I want to be near you. The world narrowed to just us, just this moment, just the sound of my pulse in my ears. Why do you want to be near me? Because you make me feel calm, he said quietly. Because you're brilliant, even though you don't see it. Because I love the way you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating, and the way you get excited about proper lab technique, and the way you actually listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. Because every time I'm around you, touching, the coffee. I thought I was imagining it. The touching, the coffee. I thought I was just, projecting what I wanted onto normal friendship things. What do you want? The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. This, I said, and kissed him. It wasn't smooth or practiced. I'd only kissed 2 people before in my life, both awkward encounters at parties that led nowhere. But Dashiell made a soft sound of surprise, and then his hands were in my hair, and he was kissing me back like I was something precious, something worth the wait. He tasted like the peppermint tea he always drank while studying, and his lips were softer than I'd imagined in all those late-night fantasies I'd tried so hard to suppress. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since the first time you corrected my pipetting technique, he whispered. You were so serious about it, explaining the proper angle, and all I could think was that I wanted to kiss you. That was literally the second day we met. I know. I've been losing my mind for 3 months, Sam. Taking stupid projects I don't need, manufacturing reasons to see you. Do you know how pathetic I felt requesting that polymer synthesis assignment? It's designed for sophomores. But it meant 4 more weeks of lab time with you. 4 more weeks of pretending I needed to lean over your shoulder to check your work. 4 more weeks of this. I laughed, giddy and disbelieving. I spent 3 months convinced I was completely delusional, that I was reading romance into basic human decency. You bring out something in me that isn't about being the best or the smartest, Dashiell said. When I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to perform. I can just be. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How terrifying and wonderful? We stayed in the arboretum until the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. We talked about everything. How he'd known he was gay since he was 14, but had never dated anyone seriously because he was always focused on the next achievement, the next goal. How I'd spent most of college convinced I was too ordinary to deserve the kind of romance I read about in books. How we'd both been dancing around this for months, too scared to risk the fragile thing we'd built. So what happens now? I asked as we finally started walking back toward campus, our fingers intertwined, still getting used to the miracle of being allowed to touch each other like this. Now we do the polymer synthesis project together, Dashiell said, grinning. And I'm going to be absolutely insufferable about having you as my lab partner. I'm going to request you for everything, Sam. Every project, every assignment, every possible excuse to be near you. Is that okay? That's more than okay, I said. But maybe sometimes we could also just spend time together without the pretense of chemistry homework. He stopped walking and pulled me close, right there on the main campus path with students flowing around us. I would love that, although technically, there's definitely chemistry happening here. I groaned at the pun, but I was smiling. That was terrible. You're stuck with me now. The puns are part of the package. And I was stuck with him. Gloriously, impossibly stuck. We became that couple in the chemistry building, the one that made other students roll their eyes affectionately. Dashiell still requested me for every project, even the ones that made no sense for someone of his level. But now everyone knew why. Now, when he brought me coffee, he'd kiss my temple as he set it down. Now, when we worked late in the lab, we'd take breaks to make out against the fume hood, giddy with the newness of being allowed to want each other openly. 3 months of misread signals and careful distance had given way to something real, something worth every moment of uncertainty. And it all started because Dashiell Winters, the most brilliant person I'd ever met, had been willing to take projects beneath his level just for the chance to spend time with me. That's when I knew what love looked like. It looked like someone choosing you, again and again, finding excuses to be near you, seeing value in you that you couldn't see in yourself. We're still lab partners. We're always going to be lab partners. And every time Dashiell requests me for another project, my heart still does that same complicated flutter it did the very first time, when I thought it was a mistake, when I couldn't imagine why someone like him would choose someone like me. Now I know. He chooses me because of who I am, not despite it, and I choose him right back, terrible chemistry puns and all.